Hi everyone, my name is David Rao and I'm the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas on Instagram, on Facebook, on Pinterest. I'm trying to figure out Twitter still, and a variety of other places when you search for my name, David Rao, or Make Moments Matter. I'm so excited that you decided to come back and spend your evening with me talking a little bit about music education. It's so great to take this time and sort of join together as a music education community and talk about those things that are working in our classroom or things that we'd like to work better. This week I'm going to do a run through of my kindergarten through 5th grade lessons for the week, and then I'm going to talk about some more back to school tips and ideas and things that I didn't get to last week, and things that I thought were fun or were helpful, things that I wish I knew in my first couple of years of teaching. So that's going to be sort of my plan. Instead of doing a deep dive on one grade level, I'm going to do just a few more of those extra things that would be nice to have. I'm trying a couple new things. Instagram, I know you can't see this, but my phone is like precariously on this stand. So if you fall over in the middle of this video, I'm so sorry, and I'll fix that. And Facebook, I'm using a new microphone. So if you can't hear me, let me know. A couple quick things. So I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff in this video, and if I ever say, oh, it's in the links, there's a page on my website, the Musical Mondays live recap for 2019-2020. And all of the stuff that I talk about, so the books and the puppets and all of the things that I mentioned tonight, I have a links page with all the links to that, so you can go and like find them and see them if you want. Or at least to see a closer view on Amazon or a website or whatever. I have links for that. So if you can't find that link on my website under the videos tab, on Facebook on this video, if you scroll down to the bottom of the caption, there's a direct link. And on Instagram, if you go to my link in bio, there's a link to the Musical Mondays recap page there as well, so if you need it. One more quick thing, if you don't want this conversation to end at 9 Eastern, you can join the Every Moment Matters Music Education Facebook group. It's a group I started, I think, in January, and has so many great members with great conversations and great things happening. So you can go on Facebook and join that. It's a closed group, just so no like bots or anything join the group. I have to approve you, but if you're a music teacher, I'll approve you. So go ahead and go join that if you're interested, so we can continue on having this great conversation. I lied there, a couple more things I need to say. This weekend, I had a giveaway, and I'm really excited. I'm going to announce the winners tomorrow. There are 4 winners who are going to win some really cool tumblers, because you got to stay hydrated, right, in your classroom. Next weekend, starting on Friday, there's going to be another giveaway. So come back to my blog, makemomentsmatter.org. It's the TGIF giveaway, and you can win some fun stuff. That is going to start on Friday and run through Sunday. So come back to that, and there's a link to that on the links page. And the last thing before I get started, there is not going to be a Musical Monday next week. I'm skipping next week because actually next Monday I am going to be driving to North Carolina. I'm doing a PD the following day, so I will be in a car, and I don't think I should do one of these live videos while I'm driving. So I won't be here next week, but I'll see you the following week. So I'll check back with you in 2 weeks and share more then. Okay, all that out of the way, all the announcements. Let's talk about music ed. So as always, if you leave questions or comments, it's really helpful, because then it's not just me talking to my phone in my empty home office. It's a conversation that's happening. And a lot of times teachers who are watching on Facebook or Instagram will comment back and forth to one another. So then it really is a conversation between you all and me. If I see a comment, I'll try and answer it, or a question, I'll try and get to that. But the more you comment and you leave questions for one another, that's really cool too. So as we're going, feel free to leave comments and questions. So my format today, I already mentioned, but in case you weren't on the video at that point, I'm going to just sort of run through my kindergarten through 5th grade lessons for the week. I'm going to sort of just share out everything I'm doing, give you a really quick run through of what I'm doing and maybe some of those songs. And then I'll jump into some tips and ideas and things about what you might want to consider as you do these first couple rotations through the school year. Some things that I wish I had known or had thought about when I was a younger teacher, or even just last year. So I'm going to run through my lessons really quick, and then I'll get to some of those ideas in just a second. So I'm going to start with kindergarten, go up through 5th grade. You're going to see a pattern, and the pattern is hook from last week or song, game, whatever to start with. All the boring logistical stuff, so roster, seating chart, teams, all of that, and I'll talk more about how to make that exciting later. And then some sort of final activity that we can then build upon next time. So you're going to see that in pretty much all my grades. So kindergarten, we come in doing the choo-choo train song. I've talked about that before. And there are even some folks who put a link to that in the last video, but the Choo Choo Train song is a really fun song. I think it comes from the Orff Source Volume 2, which is a really great book to have. But we come in, we pretend we're a train that moves us around the room and gets us into a circle shape, which is great. Then we sit down, we do crisscross applesauce, we talk about that. Kindergartners they're learning how to walk in a line and sit down and not, blurt out words. So it's worth taking the time to talk about how you want them to sit. Crisscross applesauce looks like this. And I even say, if you pretend your lap is a bowl of applesauce, what are you going to use to eat it? Oh, a spoon. Okay, so you eat the applesauce out of your lap with a spoon because I'm sitting with the kids. Oh, we need 2 spoons. I'm so hungry. So you're eating. And then I say, once you're done, put your spoons in the bowl. So that, again, it's me teaching them, it's setting up how I want them to sit. What do I mean when I say crisscross applesauce spoons in the bowl? If I take the 2 minutes at this first lesson beginning of the year, I never have to mention that again, and they just understand crisscross applesauce spoons in the bowl is sitting cross-legged on the floor with your hands in your lap. But they like it, it's fun, and taking the time to say that is worthwhile because it'll save you time later. So we talk about crisscross. We do the poem Engine number 9, which we learned last week. We add a B section. So if you don't know Engine number 9, it goes Engine number 9, going down Chicago line. See it sparkle, see it shine. Engine number 9. And that's it. And so in this lesson, we add a B section, and the B section is just choo-choo sounds. Let's say the poem. And then we say the poem again. A, B, A, B, A. Eventually, we stand up on the B section and we actually move like a train. And the goal for me is, number 1, a longer form, something different. They're understanding the A, B, A form, but also their feet are moving to the steady beat, hopefully. But that comes eventually. So choo-choo train in, sitting down, engine number 9. Then I take time to set them on their seating chart spot. I take their picture, and I'll show you why in just a little bit. And we do all of that so we know where we are. I play a little game to help them know their spot, and then we do open shut them, which is, again, it's a finger play song because you're playing with your fingers, so it's a finger play. And again, this is another song where I feel like maybe some of them know it, but it's teaching them how to be in control of their hands. So for me, it's worthwhile. And it goes like this. Open, shut them, give a little clap, clap, clap. Open, shut them, put them in your lap, lap, lap. And then I tell them the story of this one little boy who was not in control of his hands, and his hands just started creeping away and doing things, and I said, why is your hand on your shoulder? And he went, oh, sorry. And then I looked over again and I said, why is your hand on your ear? And he went, sorry. And so they think that's funny. I give him a few more examples, and then I say his hands were creeping away, they were sneaking away. And so I go, creep them, creep them, creep them, creep them up to your chin, chin, chin. Oh no, they made it to his chin, and then, oh, this is the worst of all. One time I looked over and his hand was doing this. And I said, why is your hand in your mouth? He went, I'm never supposed to put my finger in my mouth because germs. We talk a little bit about that. So you creep them up to your chin, chin, chin. Then it goes, open up your little mouth, but do not put them in. Open, shut them, give a little clap, clap, clap. Open, shut them, put them in your lap, lap, lap. It's a valuable song because it's singing. It's using your fingers to create the story. It gives them a little bit of chance to explore, to talk about body parts. You say, oh no, I found it on my shoulder. Oh no, I found my hands on my head. Oh no, I found my hands on my ear. And especially for English language learners, that's valuable. For all kindergartners, that's valuable. But most of all for me, it's teaching kids that we want to be in control of our hands and our body. So when we're sitting, our hands should be in our lap. Or if we're using our hands, we can use them. And when we're done, we need to be in control. Our hands shouldn't be over on a xylophone. Our hands shouldn't be on a puppet. It shouldn't be somewhere else. It shouldn't be on someone else. We're in control. And that's sort of where that lesson goes. And then I pull out Peter the Rabbit and we learn about our speaking voice. I've done a whole blog post, a whole video, all about using puppets to teach the 4 voices. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out on my blog. But that's sort of the end. They meet Peter. He suggests that maybe next time they'll meet another puppet friend. They will. Snowy the Owl will come in and she'll teach them about their singing voice, but that comes next week. That's the rundown of the lesson. First grade, they come in. We do our circle. We sit down in our circle and we do a very fun poem. My room is actually right next to the garden, and I say, oh my gosh, I had the window open the other day and this creature flew in and it went bzzz, and they're like, oh no. And I said, oh no, it was a bee. Oh my gosh, this bee flew in. Oh, and it was terrible. Oh, you know why this bee was so terrible? Because bees, sometimes, if you're not careful with them, bees can sting. Bees are nice creatures. Bees love to fly from flower to flower, and the bee lands on a couple kids' heads. Oh, and he loves to fly, but if he's threatened or something, he might sting, because, sometimes bees sting. Well, I have a poem about our bee that stings, and it goes like this. Bee, bee, bumblebee, stung a man upon his knee. Ow! Bee, why did you sting me? Sorry. So the bee stings me on my knee. Bee, bee, bumblebee, stung a man upon his knee. Ow! Hi, Mr. Rao. Oh, hello, Piglet. Wait, why am I here? Stung a pig upon his snout. Psst, ow! I say you are out. Out? No. This is not a good poem. And so I teach the kids the poem, and the bee, and as we're learning it, the bee stings me a few more times and stings the poor piglet a couple more times. And they love that because they know that I'm getting stung. They think the pig getting stung is particularly funny, and the pig really does not like it. But I love this little pig puppet, and I just got it at the end of last school year, and I knew I had to pull it out for this. So then the kids stand in a circle. I do the poem with them. The bee goes around, and at the end of the poem, so it goes, stung a pig upon his snout. I say you are out. And then you could just go bzz and sting one kid. But I have really big classes, so he goes bzz, 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 bzz. I think I have actually done a video about this one too. He sings 4 kids in a row, so it gets you through the poem a little bit faster. But this little bee puppet is a pretty cute little puppet. It's from Folkmana. So is the pig. I have links to both of those on the links page if you're interested. But I love puppets. And so this bee I actually use a couple times throughout the year. There are a couple different bee poems or bee songs you can use him for, or just anything springtime. He can be your little friend in springtime. And the piglet too, there are 1,000 barnyard songs you can use it for. So anyway, the bee comes out, we do bee, bee, bumblebee. I show them their seating chart spots, their roster spots. We learned Little Bunny Foo Foo in the last class. In that first class, that's one of the first things we do. So that's another finger play that you can do. I think I've done a video on that one too. We do Little Bunny Foo Foo, and then there's an accompanying video. There's actually a book called Little Rabbit Foo Foo, and it's slightly different, not exactly the same as the poem we learn, as the finger play we learn. So there's a video version of the book, and we watch that. And we don't just watch it. I say, this video is a little bit different than the version that you know. So as you're watching, see if you can remember something that's maybe a little bit different, because I'm going to ask you when we're done, what was different? So we watch for differences, and then we talk about them at the end of class if we have time. And that's the end of first grade. And I see Emily says, what do the kids do when they get out with BB? So we're all standing in a circle, and you go bzz, 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 bzz. If you're out, you sit down. And then you go all the way around until there's only one kid left standing. And I do the BB song twice. So the first time, the kid who's left standing, I say, okay, we're going to do it again. You get to choose. Does the poem start with you, or does the poem start with someone else? And who will it start with? You get to choose. So the kid gets to choose how the poem begins the next time. Then the second time we do it, because we only do it twice in a day, the kid who's left standing gets to fly the bee over to the puppet tree and put the bee back on the tree. I hope that makes sense. Okay, let's see. Second grade. We come in, we sit in the circle, we do our circle stuff. In the last class, and the very first Musical Mondays video I ever did was about this particular lesson, actually the introduction to this lesson. And we do a song called Ram Sam Sam. I have 45-minute classes. I see Julie just asked that, so that's a great chance for me to reiterate that. So I have to pack a lot in really quick. So we did Ram Sam Sam last time. So in this class period, we take it and we sort of build on it, and we take parts out of the song. So we just sing them in our head instead of singing them out loud. And like I said, I have a whole video about that if you're curious about that song and how it works. But it's sort of a cumulative song where you take out words and you cumulatively take out more and more and more until by the end you're only doing the actions and you're not singing. And again, this is sort of an audiation thing for me to get them thinking about the words in their head. But also when they come back in, when do they come in? It's a lot of like, we're training ourselves to be smart thinkers as we sing. So that's sort of where we go. We do a seating chart. Second grade through fifth grade, we also add on teams. So each kid is in one of the teams. I talked about this last time, but the teams are named after the 4 instrument families: the strings, percussion, woodwinds, and brass. So in this lesson, I have to have them sit in their seating chart spot. I have to take their picture in their seating chart spot. And I have to get them into their teams, and they need to remember all of that. And we need a song to start and end with. So that's a lot to do. So I get them on their seats quick, we take pictures quick, and then I separate them out into families, and we do, I'll talk a little bit more in a minute about how I separate them out, but we do a little game in their family spot around the room in little clusters, so they sort of remember what their family is. But another thing that reinforces their family in every class is that they line up with their family. So when I line up at the end of my class period, I have 4 lines: a strings line, a woodwinds line, a percussion line, and a brass line. I have tape on the ceiling that's the color of their family, so they can just stand right underneath their tape and look and figure out, make sure they're in the right spot. Helps them know what color group they're in, it helps them know what team they're in, but that reinforces in every class, what team are you in. So then in the next class, if we're doing a game where I'm like, okay, I need half the class over here and half the class over here, I can just say strings and percussion over here, woodwinds and brass over here. And so using the teams makes everything a lot easier. So in this lesson, I introduce that concept, which they have not had before, and we sort of learn it and run with it. And then to end our day, we start with the song Lucy Locket. And if you don't know Lucy Locket, it goes, Lucy Locket lost her pocket, Kitty Fisher found it. Not a penny was there in it, only ribbon round it. And this is another one where I've done a whole video about this song in last year's Musical Monday. So I'll just quickly highlight, I had an old pair of pants years ago that had these flap down, flap over the pocket. And so when the pants needed to be retired, I cut the pockets off, and then this can sort of emulate what Lucy Locket wore around herself as her pocket. The pocket, back in olden times, the pocket was sort of like a purse or like a handbag when ladies wore dresses but didn't have purses or handbags. They kept valuables in them. So when the pocket falls off and she loses everything in it, that's sort of a big deal. But we use the pocket, and there's a little game where we can hide the pocket. One kid leaves the room, we hide the pocket, and then we sing the song on repeat until they find it. And we do sort of a hot and cold where we sing louder if they get closer to it and quieter if they walk away from it. So it's just a fun song, and then adding the game makes it even more fun, especially when you have a physical pocket that you can hide or put around the room and use with your kiddos. But like I said, if you want to hear that whole lesson, the breakdown and the scaffolding of all of that, there's a video for that one too. Third grade, they come in. We do a fun playground song called Circle Round the Zero. We learned that in the last class. So this one, I'm not really teaching it. We're just sort of running it, which makes it makes it a lot easier because I'm not spending as much time on it. So we do Circle Round the Zero, which makes that really quick. We do the rosters where we sit in our seating chart spot. We take a picture. and then I show them their teams, and then to reinforce the teams, we have a team challenge. And the team challenge, I know this is going to be sort of hard to see. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Instagram, I'm sorry. And I'm very sorry that this is backwards because I'm using my FaceTime camera. Sorry about that. So I have this interactive PDF game. Let me see if I can enter full show. So this is just a PDF, and I've put it on PDFs, on Macs, and on PCs. You can do a full screen. So I put this on my interactive whiteboard, on my Promethean board. You can do it on Smartboard. But it's a game that kids can play. And so what they do, they hit start, and then there's a character and their name, and you have to figure out which rhythm matches that character. Let me see if I can zoom in here. Ooh, look, I can zoom Facebook. Okay, hopefully you can not see that. Awesome. There we go. And let's see, Instagram, I don't think oh my gosh, I can. How exciting. Okay, sorry, Instagram, best I can do. Okay, so what you do is Han Solo. Is it ta rest? Is it ta ta? Is it ta tt? The kids have to figure that out. So with the interactive portion of it is they get to go up and tap what they think is right. So if they think it's ta rest, they'll click ta rest, and you get, oh no, don't underestimate the power of the dark side. You chose the wrong rhythm. You're our only hope. And then they get to try again until they get it right. Han Solo is ta tt. Now you can use this for a really quick assessment if you want. You can just sit there and write, use each kid's name and just check off whether they got the rhythm right or not. It's a great review from last year. There are 30 challenge words on here. So TIE fighter, that's another ta tt. BB-8. So then they got to figure out, this one's tricky because it's 3 sounds. Is it tt ta BB-8, or is it ta tt BB-8, or is it ta rest? Well, it's not that. So the kids get to go through. I'm going to unzoom this. How do I make this a team challenge? Because remember, this is how I'm trying to help them remember out what team they're on. How do I make this a team challenge? Each kid gets to go up individually and try out the rhythm, but if they need help, they can go back to their team and get help. They can go and ask someone on their team, what do you think it is? And they get to use their team as a sounding board to figure that out. So, and then they go back and they sit with their team. So it's the 4 teams around the room. I'm not keeping score or anything like that, but it's more just like you're using your team as a reference if you need it. And if we have time, we start the song, My Mama Was a Baker. There are a lot of different versions of that, but it goes basically... My mama was a baker, a baker, a baker. My mama was a baker, and this is what she said. I shared this last year, and we realized there are like 7 different versions of this song that are all a slightly different melody, slightly different words, but it's a fun song, and for me it becomes a cumulative song. In this lesson, I really only learned basically the first verse, and then we come back later and learn more verses. But that's if we have time. Sometimes the Star Wars game takes quite a bit of time, or the seating charts did, or something else. So that's just there if I need it. But really, I'm going to hit it in my next lesson. So I'm not going to worry about if I get to it too much or not. It's there if I need it. Because, you never know, oh, is this class going to be 35 kids? Or, half of them are going to forget to come to my class or whatever. And so you need to have options for whether you have not enough time or too much time. It's better to have more than not enough. I think we've all been there where we're like, oh crap, I've got 10 minutes. What do I do? How did I get through my lesson? The last class, I didn't even get through this. So you got to have a contingency plan. It's better to have more options than not. Okay. And later I'm going to share some of my what if I have extra time things that you can do. I'll show those in just a little bit. 4th grade, we come in, we do a clap, just an echo back and forth, where I clap, use body percussion, clap, pat, stomp, I do it, they do it, I do it, they do it. And then I do a song called Chester, and I shared about this, I know before, but it goes, Chester, have you eared about Harry? Chest got back from the army. I hear he knows how to wear his clothes. Hip, hip, hooray for the army. Now, the fun thing about this is the words of the song sound like the body parts that I'm pointing to. So, Chester, have you eared about Harry? chest got back from the arm, me. I ear he knows how to wear his clothes. Hip, hip, hooray for the army. So it's fun for students. I sing it, just sort of slowly at first. We learn it simply. We learn the actions, how the actions sort of match the words. And it's sort of gradually released so that eventually they're singing without any help from me, either the words or the actions. I sit down and play at the piano. That we all did in the last lesson. So they've learned the song by now. But what do I do in this lesson is that I speed it up. So I'm sitting at the piano, and I've played piano since 2nd grade, so I'm okay with this. But I start nice and slow, and I slowly speed up, speed up, speed up, speed up, speed up. And the kids are like, Chester, have you heard about Harry? Just got back from the army. And they're freaking out, right? So it's just a fun game, but what we end up doing is, if you know you've made a mistake, if you can assess yourself, evaluate yourself, and I use those words, if you can evaluate yourself and assess yourself and know that you've made a mistake, either with the actions, I ear he knows how to wear his clothes, hip, hip, if you make that wrong, or you say, Chester, have you heard about Harry? Just got back from the Navy. Oh, that's wrong. If you make a mistake, you have a seat. And we just sort of do that as an informal, fun, as an assessment. But I use the words, if you're evaluating yourself, if you're listening to yourself, if you're conscious of how you do it. If you make a mistake, mistakes are fine. But just to show me that have a seat. To know that you did, have a seat. Keep singing, but have a seat. And so it's sort of a fun thing that we start with. We do our seating chart. We do our pictures. We do our teams. And then when we're in our different families around the room, we learn about imitation. We talk about 3 forms of imitation: echo imitation, simultaneous imitation, and then canonic imitation. We go through a couple examples, and then there's a game called Beat Detective, which is a simultaneous imitation game. You're all in a circle. One person is in charge of keeping the beat somewhere, or you're on your knees, or snapping, or whatever. And one person's in charge. The beat leader is in charge. And everyone else has to watch that person. And if that person switches from clapping to patting, everyone else has to switch from clapping to patting. But the kicker is there's one person who's watching, who is the detective, who's trying to catch the beat leader. And they get 3 chances at it. So I hope that makes sense. I went through that really quick. So you're in a circle, you're all watching one person, but you don't want the leader or the detective to know who that one person is. And so it's fun because it is simultaneous imitation. It's kids watching, body percussion, kids being in charge, kids watching for other kids, and it's just sort of a fun game. So that's 4th grade. And someone said, what was the song called? I call it Chester, but I'm sure it's out there under a bunch of other names. And I'll look for a link for the lyrics or the words, but I think it's a very famous tune, so you can just use the tune and put your words on top of that. Okay, 5th grade, and then I'm going to get into some other things in just a second. They come in, we clap, I clap, they clap, I clap, they clap. One thing to keep this fresh with the kids is that when they walk in, I say, great, are you ready for your test? And they're like, test? We just got here. I'm like, yes, here's your test. And they do it. Great, you passed your test. Well, you would have passed your test if you're in kindergarten. That was a kindergarten test. Let me give you a harder test. Oh, wow, you passed your test. Well, you would have passed your test if you're in 1st grade, because that was a 1st grade test. So it's really just me doing echo back and forth with them, but I continue to increase the difficulty, and so I go from 1 level of body percussion to 2 levels, or I do more complex rhythms, and I get to sort of more things. So I'm really challenging them a little bit by little bit by little bit, which is just scaffolding, but it's getting them from that easy to hard, and it makes them more interested in it, because they think, oh, it's a test, it's a challenge, and so they like it. So it's a fun little song, or a fun little trick for them. The trick I do in this lesson is sometimes I'll go perfect. The rhythm was perfect. It was just too loud. Great, great, just too loud. wow, that was great. Just too loud. And I keep doing that until kids are like, and I'll even be like, wonderful, too loud, but wonderful. The rhythm was great, just too loud. And I like just joking with them, but it's fun for them because then it challenges them to do it in a different way, to take my example and to be more conscious of how loud or quiet am I, and to make the whole thing a little bit more interesting. We do our seating chart spots, we do our pictures, we do our families, and then we do the song Alabama Gal, which is a really fun song. Come through in a hurry, come through in a hurry, come through in a hurry, Alabama Gal. And there are 4 verses. It has a folk dance that goes with it. It's a super great song. I did a favorite folk song set for it, which has some of the history, some of the folk dance visuals, explanation of vocabulary, all of that. It's actually a freebie in my Teachers Pay Teachers store, and I know I did not put a link to it in the links page, but I will. And it's just a really fun song. 5th graders, it's super duper easy for them, but again, when I'm strapped for time and it's the second lesson of the year and I want them to have an easy way to get into folk dancing and not be stressed out about, I'm dancing or whatever, this is like a win. So I see my kids less than 20 times a year, so in this instance, I'll take it. So it's a fun song to start with, and kids do really well with it. And if we have time, we do a little beanbag boogie at the end, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Okay, so that's my rundown of the kindergarten through 5th grade lessons. I said a lot of, there's a link for that. There's a link for that. So all of the videos from last year, I did 30 live videos just like this, and I did in-depth, like 30 minutes on here's how I here's how I do this, here's how I scaffold this. So there are a lot of those. If you go back to the beginning of last year's Musical Mondays video, you can find a lot of those beginner lessons where I just sort of lay out here's how I do it and why. So you could see some of the pedagogy of why I'm doing it that way. But there are a lot of those things if you go back to last year's videos. I'm going to forge ahead and talk a little bit today about a few of those things that'd be really nice to, well, I feel like would have been really nice to know when I was a younger teacher, or even last year or the year before. Like I wish I had been more conscious of, but now I'm glad I know. Some things that sort of you just learn along the way, and some of the resources I use at the beginning of the school year. So the format for all of my lessons this week is come in, some sort of musical hook, something musical, maybe pulling from what we did last time, maybe something simple to start this time, and then I take the time to set them on their seating chart spots, take their picture, and then get them into their families. You'll see why in a second. And then I have some sort of afterward thing to get them not thinking, this whole day was spent on rosters, because it really wasn't. It was maybe 5 minutes of that or 10 minutes of that. But something to take with them so that the next time I can build off of that. That's my format for all of these lessons. They're sort of donut lessons or sandwich lessons or whatever, whereas beginning, middle, end, and the beginning and end are the musical part, and there's that thing in the middle that's more the logistics. I have to do it. I have to do those logistical things, but bookending it with the musical stuff makes kids more interested as they come in and more excited when they leave. So that's sort of the why I did the format for that. Let me talk a little bit about my rosters and how I get kids in. So my ultimate goal, I use an app called Idoceo, which is IDOCEO, and I use it for all of my classes. It's a way that I can keep the students' pictures, and I can tap on their face on the app and give them grades. I can do all sorts of really cool stuff. Eventually, once I have everything in the iPad, and it takes a while to get this set up, I'll have a view that looks sort of like this. And if you look very closely, there are names like Marilyn Horne, Elvis Presley, Etta James. They're all in my class. No, I have very musical parents. No, so I eventually will get them all into this, and this will actually have their pictures. That's why one of the things that I'm doing in this lesson is I'm having sit on their seating chart spot and taking their pictures, because Idoceo, one of the cool things about it is I can import the large picture and it finds their faces, and I can just drag and drop onto their profile and it sticks with them. So when I have 1,200 students, 1,200 students. So having their picture and their name is like so valuable. So it is worth taking the 10 minutes today and then time after class to format this to have that resource. So here's how I sort of plan it out. as I'm getting ready for these classes, I get their roster. I have all the rosters by first name. So like I write it out on Excel and I sort by first name because I know the kids by their first name. I don't know the kids by their last name. Like some of them, but when I'm quickly running through a roster, it makes more sense in my head to have it alphabetical by first name. So I take the time to reformat that, to type out their names and format by first name, because that in my head makes everything easier. So then I take just a blank chart like this, and this, my rug in my classroom has 6 dots across by 6 dots back. And so this sort of mirrors that. So what I do is I take my roster and I write all of their names in. And I go into the lesson with that. So when it's time to put them on their seating chart spots, I have something that looks sort of like this. The teacher's name at the top, all the kids on their spots here. And then what I do as I'm going along is I call, okay, Abigail, come on up. Amelia, and before I call them up, I say, you know what, I'm so excited. Each one of you has a spot. It's going to be a great spot. But the bad news is I took your names from the computer. And you know sometimes the computer gets names wrong. Like maybe you go by JJ, but your actual name is in the computer is Jeremiah. The computer doesn't know that you're JJ. And so it wrote in Jeremiah. Or everybody, there's this girl, her name is Isabella in the computer, but everybody calls her Izzy, every single person, but the computer doesn't know that. So when I call you up to your spot, if I say your name wrong, or if I say your long name instead of your nickname, whatever you want me to call you, tell me that, and I'll change it on my roster. So as they're coming up, I say Abigail, and Abigail comes up, she's like, actually it's Abby. Oh, great, okay. This is why I don't jump ahead. I could potentially jump ahead and create all their profiles and then just run from this. But for me, it's quicker in the class period to take a pencil and scratch out Abigail and scrawl in Abby that I can go and fix later. So I don't do it on the iPad yet. I do it on paper first so that I can change it later. And then also if there's like a kid who, oh, they're still on the roster, but they've never been here and it's been 10 days in, okay, well then I got to change that or whatever. So the paper copy for me is valuable. I can leave myself little notes. I can mess around with it. Whereas if I'm trying to do it, you know, in the moment on an iPad, I just know that that's not going to work, or the app is going to shut down, or I'm going to get frustrated and then I'm going to be like, what do I do? So having the paper for me, it takes a little bit more time, but it's my fail-safe. So I have that, I write it out, I do all of that. And that's sort of how I set them onto their spot. I'll talk a little bit about what they do on their spot in a second. Let's see. I see a couple questions though. People asking about Idokio. I'm planning on doing a video just about that, but I'm trying to figure out the logistics of how to record the screen. So I'm working on that so that you get a valuable experience, but I'm not there yet, so I'm really sorry if you have Idokio questions. Let's see, do you only use Idokio for the roster and grades? Do you use lesson plan that way too? I only use Idokio for the grades. I grade in Idokio. It exports to Excel and PDF and some other things so that I can put it into my plan book or my grading system online. But when I have my iPad here and I can assess in the moment, and I have 4 Averys in my class. The great thing about Idokio is I tap on the Avery who's standing right in front of me, I tap on her picture here on the thing, and then I give her the grade, and then it pulls to her profile so that I make sure it goes to the right Avery, if that makes sense. I have a lot of classes with double names, and that's really annoying. So, like 4 Abigails. Why? So anyway, but using Idokio helps me grade in the moment, and then I pull it over to the grade book later. I hope that answered your question. And someone said, is it worth the $12? Yes, it's absolutely worth the $12. And the best thing is it's not a subscription, it's a one-time purchase. So I bought it for $7 like 6 years ago, and I still have the license for it, and I can reuse it every year and not pay another $7 ever. I paid, if you pay the $12 now, you'll never pay it again, unless they change their thing, but I don't think they would. So anyway, it's worth it. Okay, let me talk a little bit about my roster. So when I do teams, I break all my classes down into those 4 teams, and they're named strings, percussion, woodwinds, and brass. And so I put the kids in those 4 teams. I use them all throughout the year for all different sorts of stuff. As I'm trying to get them into their teams, again, I go back to my paper copy. I take a highlighter or a marker, and each team has its own color. So I go down and I mark down which kids are which. And how do I do that? Very strategically? No. I do the first kid is blue, and then the 5th kid is blue, and the 9th kid. So it's blue, skip 3, blue, skip 3, blue, skip 3, blue, skip 3. My first year trying to do this, I sat down and wasted hours trying to figure out okay, this kid with this kid, and this kid with this kid, and this kid cannot be with this kid. And I was trying to beautiful mind the whole thing, and try and get them in the perfect positions. And anyone who's an experienced teacher knows good luck, but you're going to miss someone and it's going to throw everything off. So now I just go through and sort of randomly assign kids. So it's every 4th kid or whatever is strings, and every 4th kid is percussion or whatever. And then as I see kids in the 4 groups, I realize, no, you two should not be together. Oh, I'm just going to change this real quick. And so then I change in the moment. Again, since I have it on paper, I can sort of scratch things out and change it around. The only exception I make to that, the random every 4th kid is strings or every 4th kid is percussion or whatever, is if there are 2 kids with the same name, so 2 Brysons, guess what? They're in the same family. Because there was one class last year who was do you mean Bryson T or Bryson G? And I finally was both Brysons, same family. Quit asking. So now I know that if I have multiple names, they're all in the same family. So then it's Ava, woodwinds, and they're which Ava? I'm every single Ava we have, they're all in woodwinds, so that I don't have to stress out about it. And I generally, as a rule, follow that unless there's the 2 Avas don't get along, but that's sort of my plan of how do I do that. So they're in their own teams, and then I'll talk in a second about what I do in those teams. Someone said, do you do teams younger than 2nd grade? No. I see kids once every 7 days, and the reinforcement that would be needed to do teams K and 1 would just not be worth it. I'd be spending so much time in every class trying to reinforce that. But if I saw kids every other day, I might do it with 1st grade, but not with my current schedule. I just can't. Okay, so I talked about I use rosters with my first name. I check for their preferred name, and there are a lot of reasons for that. What do teachers call you? What's the name that you prefer? Do you go by DJ or do you go by whatever instead? I follow that and I change that in my roster. I talked about how I set up the names. I'm just checking my notes here to make sure I don't miss anything. And then, as I'm going along, I make changes. So one of the things I realized today with one of my classes, so I have my roster and I pull kids out, I move them to different parts of the room so that I can look to one corner and another corner and physically see, there are the strings, there are the brass. Strings has 8 kids and brass has 5. And I look at why that is in here. Maybe there are 2 kids who are supposed to be in brass who just didn't show up but were still in the roster. So I put them in brass, not knowing they don't actually exist in our school. So I scratch them out. Well, then now I can in the moment go, you know what, strings, I'm going to pull a couple kids to go over to be in brass. So in the moment when I have it printed out like that, I can make those changes quickly. If it were on the iPad, it would take a long time to make those changes. So I do it a little quickly now that I have them on the roster. Okay, so let me go back. So let's say kids are sitting on their seating chart spots. I'm taking their pictures. To keep them in these spots for just a second before I go on, I do a couple things to help them sort of start to remember where do you go, or to just sit in those spots a couple minutes so that they this is my spot, this is what it looks like, they can feel it out a little bit. I don't say, here's your spot, now let's leave them and forget it, because they won't remember the next time. So I have them sit in their spot, and I, because it's on my special carpet, I say, raise your hand if you're on a blue dot, raise your hand if you're on a green dot, raise your hand if you're on a red dot. So kids are looking, they're figuring out what color they're on. For my younger kids, there's this really great song called Walk Around. And it's by my friend Dino Odell, who, if you're in the Kansas City area, you need to have him come into your schools. Dino is fabulous. And he's part of the Kansas City Young Artists series. And you need to have him come to your school. Anyway, Dino's great, but he has CDs online, and he has some really great stuff. But this song, Walk Around, sounds like this. And my rule is, let me get it started. So the kids, you're on your dot spot, they stand up and you do whatever you said, whatever the guy on the CD says, whatever my friend Dino says, you just can't leave your spot. So here's a little bit of it. And I hope you can hear it.
Let's walk around.
He said walk around in your spot on the seating chart. So they jump on their spot. I love it, I'm jumping right now. We're jumping on our spots. Touch the ground. So you can see that all of the stuff in this song is stuff that is exciting, it's energizing, they like the music, but it's things they can do on their dot spot. So it's things they can do in their seating chart spots. They're not just like sitting there. They're active, they're moving, they're up. There's a part where you stretch, you try and touch the sky, you go to sleep, you wake back up, you do all of it, you jump higher, you jump higher. It's a really fun song. You can get the full album on Amazon, I think for like $9. It's also, I think, 99 cents on iTunes or on Amazon, and there's a link to that on the links page. And it's called Walk Around by Dino Odell. Another thing that you can do by Dino, I'll talk about in just a minute, a really great book. So with my first grade, they're sitting on their dot spots. How do you spell his name? D-I-N-O is Dino, and then O''D-E-L-L. I'll be talking about Dino when I share this book in just a second. So another thing you could do on their dot spots, do a song they know. Have them do that song from their spot. So my first graders did Little Bunny Foo Foo on their dot spots. I could do that body percussion back and forth. Oh, I'm going to give you a test. Okay, here it comes. And they're doing that on their dot spot. You could do a song they know from last year. That's why I use these song and poem maps. So I have mapped out, oh, you're in first grade. Okay, here's the kindergarten map. I know we did this song in October, so let's take it and go with it. So instead of sitting there like, did I teach this one last year? I can pull out the map that I use, and this is a freebie on Teachers Pay Teachers, but it's just something that as I go through the year, I log what I taught and when, so that now in times like this, I can say, oh, did we do that? Yes, we did that song. Let's do it again, because we have 5 minutes. Let's make it happen. So using that sort of helps. Some things they can do when they're in their family. So I have them sit in little clumps around the room. So strings in one spot, brass in one spot, percussion in one spot, woodwinds in another spot. I get them in their families. I adjust them if I need to. I notate that on my notes. Well, then what? So I showed you that rhythm game that we did where they go up to the board, the interactive game. They can play that. They can go back to their family for help. I could say, okay, I'm going to clap. And I want you to echo back if you're in the strings theme. Great. Okay, now only if you're in percussion. Great. Now only if you're brass or if you're in woodwinds. So they're identifying who they are. And then, ooh, if I want to go to the next level, I could say only if you're in the blue team. And hopefully strings is reacting because strings is blue. And they're associating their color with their name. And so that's something I might do. I might do a game where they like move to the music, and when the music stops, you go back to your team and sit down. So that they're moving throughout the room, and then they go back to their spot. They're moving throughout the room, they go back to their spot. Helps them remember what spot of the room is it, what does my banner look like, what do my teammates look like. So it's a lot of things to help associate what team are you with, how are, and having a little bit of fun with that in that first day. You could have them create as a team where like you have to create something, with older grades, you have to create a pattern that does blah, 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 blah. And then we're going to show it later. Or, there are a lot of things you can do, but just do it with your team. So some backups. So in case, ooh, good, I have a little bit of time. In case you get to the end of your lesson and go, oh no, I have too much time. Or what are some things that you can do in those first couple days? Let me show you like 3 of my favorite books and then a couple other extra little things you can do. This book, which is called Czar and the Broken Spaceship, is by my friend Dino Odell, and you can get this on his website. It's a really fabulous book, but there's also a video on YouTube that's free that goes along with it. But if you've ever done that story that goes, hello, my name is Joe, and I live in a button factory. I have a wife, or whatever. I hate that poem. I never teach that poem. I hate it. But in this story, Dino and his friends are walking through the park, and oh my gosh, a spaceship crashes. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. It crashes, and what happens? Oh, an alien comes out. Well, the alien, with his 3 eyes and his 2 mouths, he says something to us. And I did a whole blog post about this book. It's a fabulous little book. But the point is that he needs your help to start a spaceship back up. There are a ton of buttons, and you have to press the right one. So you can press one with your knee, and then you press with your elbow. Ooh, can't see that. And then you press with your nose. And so kids, by the end of the song, are like pressing, just like doing, like they're trying to get all of them. It's a cumulative thing with actions. And so they keep adding more and more and more actions. This is just a fun visual representation of that song. And that song, if you are interested in the song Walk Around that I just talked about, Czar is on the same album. So you could buy the whole album and you get the song. But there is a video version of this, and there's the book, and the book is really great. It's great to have at the end of your class if you're stalling for time. What do I do? I have 5 more minutes. This is a really fun song to do, and the book is a really great way to get into that. I love this book called Music Is. Music Is by Brandon Stussy, illustrated by Amy Martin. It has the most gorgeous pictures. It's a board book. I got it for my nephews when they were born, but it is just a beautiful, beautiful book. And it talks about what music is. And I think I had never really done it at the first week of class, but I had a kindergartner who at the end of class goes, "When are we going to do the music?" And I was like, "What do you think we've been doing for the past 45 minutes?" So I had to explain to him, because for him, he thought, when are we going to do the music is, when are we going to hear recorded music? And that was what in his head was music class. And so I said, oh, well, sometimes we listen to music, and sometimes we make music, and sometimes we say poems, and sometimes we dance, and sometimes we play instruments, and sometimes, and so getting into his head, what is music? And that's, one of those things that we carry into us. What is art? What is physical education? What is, whatever? We have those things in our head, and kids do too. So I say, or I use this book, what is music? And I say music is quiet. Music is loud. Music is slow or made of fast sounds. Music is hard. Music is soft. Music is sad. Music is happy. And it goes through. It has one and many. There are a couple that don't make sense to kids or a lot of people these days. Lo-fi and hi-fi. That's sort of funny. I sometimes skip that page. Acapella or instrumental, acoustic, electric. But I just love that, like, the gorgeous pictures, the representations of lots of different cultures, lots of different ages, lots of different people of all different shapes and sizes and everything. And it's just sort of really cool. So this is a fun book to take and use with kids. It's a board book. It's really, I think it's $8, but I put a link to that too. And then one more that people last year suggested to me, so I got it and I read through it, is Because by Mo Willems. And this book, I looked on Amazon today, the hardback version of it, and I have a link to it. The hardback version is $7. What? You can't even get it used for that amount of money, and it's new, hardback, $7. So I put a link to that, but I'll just read just a tiny little part of it. This is by Mo Willems, who's a pretty famous children's author. Because a man named Ludwig wrote beautiful music, a man named Franz was inspired to create his own. Because many years later, people wanted to hear Franz's beautiful music, they formed an orchestra. Because a man had practiced since he was a kid, he was asked to join. Because a woman studied night and day, she too was asked to play. Because many others loved and practiced their instruments, there were enough musicians. Because someone created a poster about Franz's music, tickets were sold. And because the train conductor stopped the train at the Grand Concert Hall, the orchestra conductor arrived. Because the orchestra librarian had copies of the score, the orchestra rehearsed. And it just goes on, and it's, I think, just a beautiful book. But But I love it because it's not just the musicians on the stage. It tells all of this backstory too. And it's just a great, great book to use when you have a minute, or to use anytime to build a lesson around. And oh my gosh, it's only $7 on Amazon, brand new. I have a whole page of some of my favorite books. So if you go in and you're like, this is too many books, don't be overwhelmed. But I have a whole list on Amazon of like, one day I went through and was like, what books are music books? What are books about female musicians? What are books that I can use for Black History Month? What can I use for Hispanic History Month? So I tried to bookmark all of those, and I have a page with all those things in there. Okay, a couple more things. Ooh, and I have just a few more minutes. Some other things that are really great to use in those first couple classes. Open shut them. That finger play I did towards the beginning of the video is great, even if you're using it for first or second grade, to remind them, here's how we use our hands. Here's how we're in control of our bodies. The song Walk Around that I just shared from my friend Dina Odell, you can use it either on your dot spots, you can use it around the room, but if I'm using it around the room, I usually say you can walk around, you can hop, you can jump, you can do whatever the man on the song tells you to do, as long as you're not touching anyone else. If you're in your own space, not touching anyone or anything, you're doing the right thing. So giving them that freedom to move and do their own thing while not messing with anyone else is a fun thing to let them be able to do. There's a song on this fabulous album called Kids in Motion, and when I student taught, my cooperating teacher was like, I have that on record. And she pulled it out. But Kids in Motion is great, by Greg and Steve. This is super duper old, but it has some really great songs on it, one of which is the Beanbag Boogie. I use that all the time. And so the Beanbag Boogie has two parts. One part, well, I say you toss. I don't know that they do that in the original, but the part where you toss, that's the chorus. And then the part where you balance on your head, you balance on your shoulder, you balance on your elbow, whatever the song tells you to do. But as you're doing that, you have to move. So you can't just stand here like this. You have to, like move or do something. Put on your shoulder. And so this is another one of those things where kids get to move and have fun and be excited, but also we're talking about the directions. So my class rules are: keep it simple, be smart, be safe. When I'm introducing the Beanbag Boogie, I do it in this way. I say, okay, there are two parts to the song, the part where you toss and the part where you balance and dance. Now, the first rule in my classroom is keep it simple. So if it's your turn to toss, probably don't say, okay, I'm going to put it on my foot, I'm going to flip it up and over my head, I'm going to catch it on my heel, I'm going to flip it back up, I'm going to do elbow, 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 catch it on my chin, drop it back into my hand, and start over. That's too hard. Start simple. Start with just tossing. If you get really good at the tossing, toss to your other hand. If you're good at that, toss back and forth. If you get really good at that, you can do, whoa, under your leg. Oh my gosh. If you get really good at that, you can do behind your back or catch under your arm or something else. But start simple. Keep it simple and go from there. And then my next rule is be smart. So when you're balancing, there's the part where you balance, right? You balance on your head, but you still have to move. You got to do something that'll work when you move. You could do this, the floss, right? But could you do this when you have it balanced on your head? No, you can't dab, because if you dab, the beanbag falls off. That one wouldn't work. You got to think about actions that work while you're doing the song. And so we work through some of those. And the last one is be safe. So if you're tossing and you go and you hit the ceiling, is that safe? And I use this song, just the fun sort of beanbag song, as a way to talk about the rules, to make the rules fit in context and to not just be random abstract ideas, but we're applying them to this song. It doesn't have to be the Beanbag Boogie, but the Beanbag Boogie is fun and kids like it already, and this gives them a way to apply what they've learned about the rules. Okay, I know that's a lot. I talked about a lot of things, a lot of resources to have, a lot of ideas about rosters and about seating charts, and I hope that it was helpful. If you have any questions, please send me a direct message or leave a comment on either the video or leave it on my page, or you can join the Every Moment Matters Facebook group. But please leave those questions, because I'll come back to them and try and answer them the best that I can. Remember, there's no Musical Monday next week because I'm traveling to go do a PD that following day, so I can't drive and do the video, but I'll be back the following week, so I'll see you in 2 weeks. Like I said, if you have any questions along the way, check that links page or leave me a question here, and I'll try and answer that the best that I can. I hope this was helpful. Have a great Monday night and great week with your students. Bye, everyone.